Um, yes, I was telling Joel that definitely if you are given the opportunity to do something more than once, in my case, about a year and a half now, you learn definitely what works and what doesn't. And I've learned some of those good life lessons, one of which I'll make mention when we're talking about safety here in just a few minutes. But I do have a few PowerPoint slides that I do want to sort of set the stage with as to how this all came to be. Murray, go ahead and advance to the next slide. So, and I'm sure some of y'all can relate to this, if not all of you. When I started doing wood turning about 4 years ago, people that really didn't know much about what wood turning was, they started asking all kinds of questions about, oh, you do stuff with wood, you do wood turning. And so they started asking all interesting kind of questions because they're interested, but they really don't know what wood turning is all about. Next slide. We're getting there. All right. Well, the point is, when they say, oh, okay, you do stuff with wood, they somehow have this vision that we have some kind of superpowers, wood-turning powers, that we could make almost anything, right? When, in essence, in simple fact is, well, I can turn a bowl, and that's pretty exciting. I'm real happy about that. Next slide. So people would say, hey, well, of course, we've seen this shirt before too. The clothing industry is getting behind it too. I turn wood into things. What's your superpower? So that's just perpetuating that idea that, well, we're wood turners. We can make anything, right? Next slide. So started getting a lot of different questions. Hey, can you make this? Can you make that? Next slide. Things like, well, something like that, for example. No, not exactly. I don't think I can make that. Next slide. Or how about a wooden bicycle? Well, I can make a bowl. I can turn a bowl, not a wooden bicycle. Next slide. Or, oh, there you go, a pocket watch. Hey, you do stuff with wood. Can you make this? No, I don't think I can do that. Next slide. Well, okay, at least it's a hollow form, so we're moving in the right direction, right? So I have some hollowing tools, but nothing on that scale. So anyway, started getting all these questions. So next slide. Then enter my oldest son and his wife. A couple Christmases ago, I was trying really hard to figure out what I could make him for Christmas, my oldest son, Lane. And he's very pragmatic. If anything that he has, it has to serve a purpose. And so I pulled his wife aside, Brandy. I said, Brandy, would he like a bowl? And she was like, well, what would it do? Well, it's a bowl. It looks pretty, right? And so she started then asking, well, could you make this? Could you make that? And I'm saying, no, I can turn a bowl. No. Anyway, so finally, knowing Lane like she does and I do, she said, you know what? He loves to read. He loves to read. Could you make some bookends? Next slide. And so I said, well, okay, everybody believes, as a wood turner I have superpowers. Maybe I can make some bookends. So I went ahead and just stepped out, leap of faith and said, yes, I can turn some bookends. Had no idea what I was going to do or how I was going to do it. Next slide. So my mind started racing. Bookends. How could I do that? What would that look like? Next slide. Well, I finally figured it out, and Christmas was saved, and those were the first bookends I made for my oldest son. They live in Austin, out of some mesquite. And all is well, so I gave him something. He appreciated it. It serves a purpose. It's not just sitting there. And so that's how I came to starting to turn bookends. Since that time, I've turned a number of bookends. I have a few. I've given away some, sold a bunch. But I've learned a whole lot, like Joel was saying, some do's and don'ts, and refined the process. But I'm still learning, too. Next slide. So turning bookends. When you think about it, bookends are functional, and so they're going to have some weight, some density to really do a good job being bookends, correct? So there are some things that I came across and some really good resources that I came across on the web, on the internet, that helps with that, and these resources may be very helpful to you as well. After I point out a few of those things about selecting wood, then I am going to go through the beginning process of taking a piece, in this case right here, piece of good old mesquite, and I'll take us through some steps and considerations as we unveil what's underneath there. So on the wood selection, some things that, and by the way, I emailed Joel a handout that he can get to your webmaster and make available to y'all for the website, and it covers this information in more detail. But one of the things that, when you're selecting wood, I'm very blessed, and y'all may also have some of the same kinds of opportunities to harvest and get greenwood, cut down trees, look at different pieces of wood, look at crotch areas, and try to figure out, I wonder how that wood is going to look underneath there. And so as I started to learn about density and the weight of different woods and wood species, I came across a website that was exceptionally helpful. Can you go back to the slide? Next slide. Next slide. It's wooddatabase.com, and that's the website. And there you can query what kind of particular qualities you want to find in any particular species of wood. In this case, I was looking for some wood that would end up being nice and heavy, nice and dense, so it could really function successfully as bookends. And so I came across, have y'all heard of the Djenka Scale? Basically it's a hardness scale. And it uses, the wooddatabase.com uses that as one of its filtering criteria, if you want to. And so I came up with an idea of looking at the woods that had a Djenka scale of 1,000 and above. These are woods like mesquite, for example. Mesquite, honey locust, Osage orange or bodark, red oak. These are all heavy, dense woods. And the Djenka scale was one way to filter out some of the softer hardwoods. And then the other thing that I looked at was I wanted it to have some good weight, and so I set a query criteria of 38 pounds cubic foot. So if you have a cubic foot of this particular species, everything that weighs 38 pounds and above, dry weight, that was the other criteria. So when I did that query, it came up with 65 North American hardwoods that met that criteria. And I'm going to pass this around. You can see the different ones: ash, pecan, Osage orange, a bunch of great native American hardwoods, North American hardwoods that are really good, that we have here that we can harvest and turn into some beautiful pieces. In my particular case, I was looking for something that would have a lot of weight and density, so when you have them as bookends, then it would really do a good job holding up between, holding books up there. The other thing that really is important, wood is wood, but wood that has incredible features, beautiful accents, beautiful figuring, that's what really catches your eye. And as you start being around wood more and more, you start to look for opportunities where there's crotches. This is Bradford pear, which is a really nice wood, and it's a good, hard, dense wood. This is one that I still have drying, and it will end up being a nice opportunity. That's Bradford pear also. This was some wormy ash enhanced by Mother Nature. We've got some pecan sitting over here getting ready. So when you pick out wood, in my case, I really like to find wood that has some really unique characteristics. Bark inclusions, mesquite is a wonderful wood for that. I've done probably more bookends out of mesquite than anything else, just because of you never know what's going to be in there. Talking about safety, I've got a heavy duty one-way one-way faceplate on here with 18 screws, and so that sucker's not going anywhere. On my old lathe, I was using, it was an old Grizzly from 1980 or something. Anyway, I was using this faceplate, very thin, and I was actually working on some bookends. At the very beginning, it was off-center, it was heavy, and I did have my face shield on, thank goodness. But in hindsight, I was going a little too fast. And even I did have the tail stock up and tightened down, but just the force of the weight and it being off center, and there was a crack running through the middle of it that I didn't think went through all the middle of it, but it did. It broke, and part of it goes this way, and thank goodness I was wearing my face shield, so do wear your face shield, and it hit me as a glancing blow on this side here. I wasn't standing right in the line of fire, but I was like right here. Knocked me down, scared me to death. So cannot emphasize enough the importance of proper safety. Face shield, definitely. And also always use your tailstock. Make sure it's nice and tight. And use your tailstock as long as you can. All right. So picking wood that has those characteristics is something that nice and hard, dense, heavy wood. Let me jump into starting to turn here, and I'm going to talk about some design considerations as we go through. This right here is a nice piece of mesquite, and you can see it's got some really nice flowing bark areas here. We've got some bug action that's been going on. There's no telling what's going to come flying out of here. That's why I'll wear the face shield. So I've got it on a face plate right now, and when I first put it up here, I've already, trued it up a little bit so it's round. But the first thing that I'm going to do is just start to peel it away and start to see what's underneath there. Looking for opportunities with the flow of the grain, looking at bark inclusions, because there's a couple ways down the road here that you can cut it to make different kinds of bookends, depending on what you want to spotlight. So I've got it on a faceplate right now. I'm going to go ahead and turn a tenon on this end, and I'm going to true it up a little bit more, turn a tenon on this end, and then I'm going to switch it around, put my chuck in there, and then I'll take it further, and I'll show you where we get it to the point where we then take it off and do some consideration for cutting. Can you all hear me, or is it echoey? Okay, all right. If it gets annoying when I'm talking with this on, just tell me, and I'll stop and flip it up. And it's still not very balanced right now. And even if it was totally tuned up there, wood is not perfect and equally centered anyway. So I'm turning about 611 RPMs there. we're all probably in the habit of moving that tool rest while it's still moving. We really shouldn't. Whoa, too fast.